Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Cafe. I'm using my deep voice this morning. I am here this morning having a wonderful time. We have a guest today who is all the way on the other side of the world, and we're excited to talk with him, and we'll introduce him in just a moment. But before I do that, of course, I have to bring in the Wonder Woman of wisdom, the gal of G-word greatness, the wonderful, the powerful, the wise, the exciting Tamara Zoner. Hello, Tamara Zoner. How are you this morning? Oh, I lost you, Tamara Zoner. I can't hear.
I was muted. I muted myself.
Oh, don't mute yourself. We need your voice, woman. We need your voice.
I'm wonderful. How are you, John?
Yes, you are. You are the Wonder Woman of wisdom.
No wonder. That was a funny one.
That was a off the cuff, flying by the seat of my pants kind of thing.
Well done. You're very good with the improv.
Yeah, no, this was just bullshitting. So anyway, Tamara, we have a guest today. Bo Bissett is has got a lot of credential in the fact that a lot of modalities and going through his website's fascinating. I listened to another interview he did with someone else, and it was a great interview. I enjoyed it. And I think we're going to have a really fun conversation today.
Cool. We usually do. So let's get it.
Let's go on. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome to you the creator of Amoni, Mr. Bo Bissett. Hello, Bo. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, John. And Tamara, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
We love it. And I'm sure Tamara greatly appreciates the fact that you called her Tamara and not Tamara.
I do.
So that's good. So Bo, there's so much to talk about with you. I use NLP as well and various techniques when I'm working with people. So why don't you tell us about you and what you do?
Okay. My name is Bo Bissett. I live in Taiwan. I moved here. I moved to the city that I'm in 5 years ago. But I moved here originally because, as like you and I were talking before the show started, John, I was a big runner, and my running started when I was, and I didn't realize it until I started doing the work that I do now. And I started when I was 12 years old, and my parents sat my brother and I down. They told us that they were getting a divorce, and I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, and I mean I knew what a divorce was, but none of my friends had been divorced. It was kind of like the Leave It to Beaver neighborhood where everybody was married and happy, or supposedly happy, right? And so as soon as they told my brother and I that, like, I just freaked out. I stood up and ran out of the room and out the house, and then like into the woods, and I came back later that night because I was hungry, and I was 12 years old and I didn't know where else to go. And that started my running, and it started with running. And then from there, materialized into drinking, drugs, and I ran away. I left the States when I was about 27, and I just moved country. Every time I would get anxious, or every time I would have a breakup with a girlfriend, or didn't like my job, then I would just pick up and boom, I'd leave the country and go somewhere else. And I just did that over and over and over again until I was my late 30s. I called my brother. I was in Vietnam. I was passing out on the streets drunk, and I was sniffing heroin at the time. And my brother was like, I was like, man, I got nothing, man. I'm bottomed out. I don't know what else to do. And he was like, well, come home and we'll sort you out, and we'll get you back on your feet. And so I did, and I went home, and I got there, and I was like, I enjoyed being overseas. I didn't really want to, I kind of ruined a good thing, And so I was like, how am I going to get myself out of this? I bought a cheap bike, and I started a website, and I was like, I'll ride my bicycle across the country, and I'll write a blog, and then, somewhere along the way, I'll become like a travel writer, and, that'll just be my thing. Right. So I rode from Atlantic Beach, North Carolina to San Diego, California. I made it to the other side, and I made it, but nothing materialized. And I ended up with my aunt and uncle after that, and they were like, we'll help you we'll help you get on your feet. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I gotta do the old fashioned way and just, get a job and, do it like, I guess everybody else. So, at that time I found out, my aunt had breast cancer, and I was staying with them, and I was trying to do freelance work at the time, and I was working out of their place, and I was drinking like a case of beer a day. And then at night I was doing, I had Jack Daniels to put me down, like put me to sleep, right? And my aunt came home one day, said she'd been to the doctor with my uncle, and she told us that she told me that she had breast cancer, and that was like my big wake up call, because I'd been in multiple accidents before then. I tried to kill myself, and with drinking and driving and just drugs and everything else that I'd done, and it took my aunt telling me that she had breast cancer to me to like really wake up. And from that day forward, like I was like, all right, this is it. Sober. I'm gonna be sober. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna, change my life. And I did meditation. I did Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza, and like I spent thousands of dollars on courses, and I just did everything I could, man. And it was just like, I was moving myself through sobriety, and but it, the life I wanted, just like nothing was materializing, and I just over and over, and just one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. I just felt like I was getting beaten, punched, and kicked, and it was just rough. And I ended up back in Taiwan, and the girl that I'm married to, the woman that I'm married to now, we first met when I first got here, and she was going through, she was ending a marriage. And so I kind of pulled her into my world of like growth and, trying to better myself. And we pushed and pulled each other along until I found the work that I do now. And I found that work because we had, as good as we were together, like we were unbelievable. We are unbelievable. But, as good as we were in our good times, we're equally bad in our bad times. And so just some of our arguments just brutal. And the last one was like, all right, we've done everything we can on our own. Like, we need to seek outside help. And so a Buddhist friend introduced us to a guy who did work called the Spirals. It was a program put together by an Australian guy. And so, and I met with the guy the first day, boom, changed everything, changed my perspective. It completely woke me up to the fact that the life that I had created, the life that I was living, was my fault. And as soon as I realized that, I just broke down. I cried for like probably nonstop, probably for like 12 hours. It was just unbelievable. Just letting it go, and letting go. And over the course of the next like 7 weeks, just everything just started falling into place. And it was just amazing. So, and the thing is like I went in with the intention to heal my relationship with my wife and like to get over my addictions. And, I had put my addictions in the past. Like I kind of figured like, all right, I guess I'm just, an alcoholic and I'll never drink again. And, I'll just be an angry sober person, And, but I started going through this work, and I asked the guy, I was like, what we're doing is we're finding, connecting with, and releasing these emotions that I buried or that I programmed as a kid. So by doing so, I should be able to, theoretically drink again if my addiction is attached to those emotions, right? And he was like, man, don't, like, I would not go there. And based on all the stuff that I've told you, you can probably guess that I did. And so I did. I was like, I'm gonna try it, man. Like I believe, like I believe in what I've learned and what I've let go, and I think that's a big part of it. And so I did. I had a drink one weekend, and then the next weekend I had 2 drinks, and the next weekend I had to have the bottle, and like that demon started waking up again. And I was like, I didn't get it, man. So I took what he had, took the program that he had taken me through, and I tweaked it and I worked on it, and like, yeah, it's that's where Amoni is. Amoni is kind of built on the foundation of that work, which is muscle testing, meridian release points. I created the Amo breath, which helps. When I was going through this work, one of the biggest things that I suffered from was anxiety. Like, it was so bad, like I would shake, and like, you have the classic example of somebody experiencing anxiety in a movie or a TV show, right? They pick up a paper bag and they're just breathing, breathing in the bag. And I felt like that. And as I was going through it, my wife, she was learning Reiki. And so she was working with me, and, when I would get anxiety, and I was like, I can't rely on her. Like, every time I'm like, losing my stuff. Right. So, everything that I've learned, all that I've been through, like, everything kind of came together, and the Amma breath has helped me move that anxiety. And it was just an incredible, like, a cornerstone part of what I do now. And because it's a 3-part breath. Amo in Spanish means I love, right? And then this breath is AMO. So the first part is we visualize white light coming down in the crown of your head, down through the throat, into the heart chakra. So it's like a ah. And with the M is like a and then with that M, we imagine the light like swirling around in our heart center. And collecting the emotions that we found using the muscle testing and the meridian points and stuff. Right. And then with the O's, we imagine that energy that we've pulled down, as well as the energy that we've collected, that we've connected with, shooting out of our chest. And it's the M, the humming part of the breath, actually, the humming stimulates the vagus nerve, which is an emotional reset. And it's just a beautiful process that just kind of just happened. I was going through.
So this Amoni is the process by which you work with clients now, right? Is this correct?
Yeah. Sure is.
It's interesting because it all really comes back to the concept of self-awareness and being very aware of your own responsibility for your life.
Exactly.
And your own direction of your life. And one of the things I find really interesting about your story thus far is the idea of when you don't know yourself, or you're not aware of yourself in such a way, you seek for things to find a positive sensation or positive feeling. And you put yourself into that state. In neurolinguistics, of course, you talk about anchoring, right? And in anchoring, I truly believe addiction is medicating fears myself, but I believe that they're what they're doing is they're anchoring the positive sensation as I need this thing. That's my anchor. My positive sensation is this thing, and they become addicted to the feeling of that state. Whereas opposed to the feeling that they're trying to mimic is actually a feeling from within, which you're awakening in your Amoni. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Tamara, I know you. You're gonna want to go back into his story, aren't you?
Well, of course. And one of the things, and you mentioned it too, but you used a different word, John, is Bo, you said, you realized it was all your fault. And I always put a little disclaimer around that word for my clients. It's not your fault that your parents got divorced, right? But it was your responsibility how you responded to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and John, you used the word responsibility too. And I think that that's so key. So we have to recognize at some point, hopefully we recognize, nobody has to do anything, that we have the ability to respond in a way that supports us in our experience instead of hiding and running, which is what you did for so many years, but also with that awareness of like, I'm going to do these things that make me feel good temporarily. And that way I can completely avoid myself.
I saw a speaker one time who was brilliant, and his line was, be an action hero, not a reaction zero.
Yeah.
That guy.
Was that speaker someone you knew close and personally?
Some guy called the corporate action hero. Bo, you might not know this. Before we did all this stuff that we're doing now, all the spiritual work we're doing now, I used to be a keynote speaker called the corporate action hero. And that was one of my catchphrases. But it really comes down to, do you find in the work that you've done with your own personal self and with your clients that it really, there's a correlation of just in self-awareness, addressing the fears that you have to overcome? Like your divorced parents could easily set up a fear of being abandoned or a fear of not being loved in some form.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, fears are future based, right? So it's like, what's going to happen next, right? So it's like, the better we can pull ourselves into, where we are right now, right? Right now, us talking together, like all three of us are fine, right? There's nothing, we all have a roof over our head, and like, we're all hydrated and fed, and everything's great, right? So, the minute we step out of that and we start thinking like, oh, what's going to happen next, right? That's when the fear creeps in, right? So I found one of the big tricks, like that, to pull myself out of that moment, like almost immediately, when we find ourselves overthinking, is to ask yourself, like, I love this little trick. It's just like, is it true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, like the story, like that it starts off small, and then it snowballs, into this big. Because we're natural storytellers, right? So it just grows into this huge thing. It's like, is it true? And like by the time you ask yourself that, it's like manifested or changed shape into 10 different things, and now you have like aliens coming in and attacking you. And like, what? Whoa, no, that's not true. So. Anyway, that's I love that trick to pull yourself out of that.
You said something that I talk about very often. It's the idea that fear is not rooted in the present moment. Fear is a future event that you are negatively focused about. Because if you weren't negatively focused about it, if you're positively focused about it, you would be afraid, right? So it has to be negatively focused on certainty. That's what fear is. And then what's really interesting is you talk about the technique of asking yourself, is this true? The technique I use comes from my theater background. In Broadway, when you're on stage and you forget all your lines and you've got 1,000 people in front of you, the first thing you're trained to do is relax all your muscles and exhale.
Right.
And the reason, and all the lines come right back to your head. And the reason this works is because the primal fear response makes us store air so we can run further and faster. And so by storing air within ourselves, we are now only thinking about survival mode, and all other cognitive thought goes away because now we're in a survival mode out of fear. And so by exhaling and releasing, you're doing that. One of the things you said with your Amani is you were using breath work. And I found that fascinating because to me that, when you look at, even biblically, they say it's the breath of God. Buddhists do breathing meditations, Hindus do breathing meditations, Native Americans do chanting with breathing. So breathing and breath itself is a huge part of it, of our connection to source, in my opinion. And so you've been able to formulate this into a structure called Amani. And how successful has that been? Have you been really to help people with that?
Yeah, I have. Changed marriages, like eradicated addiction. One of my most recently, like I had someone who was they were with someone, and then the guy that the girl was with was like, he was traveling, he was a successful entrepreneur, and he wanted to move around, and she couldn't go with him. She just had this fear of leaving her family, leaving her job, and like, so we were going through this, and she found like her abusive relationship with her father, and like there were so many other things that that were keeping her rooted in where she was, scared to make a move, right? She'd been playing small, and then as soon as we went through the work, boom, the next thing you know, she's traveling around the world with a boyfriend. It's just not like amazing, man. So
right. Yeah.
There's just been so many of us, like we limit ourselves based on, and like I said, like Tamara said, it's our responsibility. And I'm a little bit more harsh, I guess, about, saying, it's my fault, right? Or, it is our fault, because I think like, but that's how our system works, right? It's how the subconscious works. Like it it grabs onto these external events or our reaction to these external events. And it's like it programs, it's like, all right, so next time this thing happens, then this is what I'm going to do, right? Because it's also got to run the heart and the brain and the lungs and, you know, the hormones and everything else like that. So it's like, you know, everything on the outside is like, dude, I don't want to deal with that, right? I got too much else going on with it. So, you know, what we hold on to is, you know, we did it, you know, so.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing about that statement though is that you can't change your past.
No,
You can't. There's nothing back there you can go back and alter, right?
no, exactly.
The only thing you and here's another thing is your future. Nothing ever happens in the future. The things that are happening in the future is just a place where we set goals for our next present moment, and that outcome that we're trying to achieve is dependent upon our present moment awareness and being very much in this space, creating this new and that big outcome is coming to us. We're not trying to get to it. That's where I see a lot of people start to struggle, is they sit in their present moment and they feel like that giant thing is looming over them and they have to get it. Feels oppressive, as opposed to, well, I can just stay here and do something small in alignment with it and watch it come and surround my life, right? And what's interesting is when I look at the concept of fault itself, and I love that you guys are bringing this word up, because when I think of fault, it denotes back to the original definition of the word sin, which is just means to miss the mark. Just means to miss the mark. And when you're looking at missing the mark, right, there's a difference between missing the mark and enveloping fault. And to me, when I look at fault, I look at something that's me beating myself up. Whereas missing the mark is me saying, okay, I didn't get that right. I'm doing something different this time.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I look at fault, I just look at the word fault as a repeating of the same beating myself up. Does that make sense, Tamara?
Yeah, totally. And I like the way that you set out those two differences of sin and fault. And, you know, I don't believe that beating ourselves up serves us for very long. It tends to cause us to do even more, you know, harmful behaviors. And so I love what one of my seniors, when I was working in senior living, told me. He said that he's never made a mistake. Everything he does is just an experiment. And it either works out or it teaches him something.
Right. I agree.
I agree. You did a lot of experimenting.
I did.
But I also think it's so important that we choose our own words, right? Yeah. I'm one who teaches self-love and to transform your relationship with yourself to be more loving and compassionate. And so, of course, I'm going to be like, wait a second, with that fault word. And if that has worked for you specifically, Bo, and anybody listening, to get you out of that hole, to dig yourself back out of it, then use those words. It's what works for you. And every word means something different to each person based on their own personal experience of life.
I like that.
One question for you, Bo, that you're apparently always ready to answer. And I don't usually read much of bios or much of these questions, but I was glancing through your Podmatch page, and one question stood out. So I would like to ask you this. Why is frustration so important?
Okay. Frustration. I like to use like a visual, like two different gears, right? So you have the bottom gear is like your subconscious programs, right? So, and then the top gear is your conscious hopes and dreams. And basically, you know, let's say you want to stop drinking, right? But you have this program that's running, that's saying like, you know, you have to self-sabotage, you're not worthy. And so you use alcohol to basically beat yourself up, keep you small, you know, and keep you from, you know, realizing your potential. Well, your conscious hopes and dreams are like, I want to stop drinking. I want to be the best person that I can be. But then I find that the frustration that you feel, the friction between those two gears, right? The friction between what you consciously want to do and what you subconsciously is, you know, programmed to do. And so, you know, that's like when you find that frustration, you know, whether it's like, you know, stopping drinking or trying to, you know, fix your relationship with food or with your family or whatever it is, you know, that frustration that you feel is that the competition between those two between the conscious and the subconscious.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, and especially hearing your description of that from a neurolinguistic standpoint, because you when you're working with someone with neurolinguistics, you're catching that conflict, and it to me it's fascinating. It's like one of the things that when I'm coaching, I'm always listening for the words wanting, needing, hoping, trying, because if someone's wanting, needing, hoping, or trying, that means they're not doing anything in the present moment. Means they're not active. They're not actually doing something. And I think that one of the topic that just came up with me yesterday, I got into a conversation with someone, and it kind of really fits really well with and I'd love to get your perspective on this, Bo.
Okay.
When you look at the word ego literally translates as to simply self-awareness.
Right.
And when some people use the word ego, they tend to mean a narcissist. That's what they say. Well, he's got a big ego, or he's got an ego. Look at the ego on that guy, or something like that. But to me, it's the original meaning is correct. It just means self-awareness. Right. And when I look at that self-awareness, and I go, now I can be in this place and I'm very overly aware of myself to the exclusion of others. Or I can be in this place and be overly aware of others with the exclusion of myself and be selfless. And I think in to have a balanced, loving life, you have to stay in balance with loving yourself as equally as loving others. And because if you want to look at it from a big time spiritual perspective, we're all part of God. And there's not one part that's more valuable than any other or less valuable than any other. And so it all needs to be an equal balance of love. And so when in your work, do you find that, and this is the big one, do you find that people change the definition of words? Because I had a guy literally yesterday say to me, and he started this whole thing. He said, to you, ego means self-awareness. To most of us, it means, and he started listing these new definitions of what the word ego means. Right. And I was like, but if we start creating so many definitions around words, then how can we get on the same page?
I agree, man. It's really difficult. Like right now, I think, I'm not sure if they do it in a lot of other languages, but I know like in America, like English, especially in America, it's always like we're always creating words and we're always like throwing more stuff out there. So, so people can feel like, they're different, or, I can identify with this. Like it's not different, but same. It's just, we're always creating these conditions for whatever it is we're feeling. And it's just constant creation of just new stuff for people to hang on to and identify with. And I think that it's really, that kind of behavior is pretty dangerous. Especially like when you started talking about like, I am this, right? Or I do this. Like when you hang on to like, for example, I'm not trying to beat up on anybody, but like I'm a vegan, right? Or I'm a bodybuilder, right? Or I only, by doing that, we box ourselves into just like, I am just that one thing, right? And so we miss out on all the other opportunities that are available out there, right? And would you I am this, and we hang on to it, like, that badge that we all get at a conference that we go to. My name is blah, 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 right? That's, and so.
That would go back to Tamara's concept of, what is frustration? When you box yourself in like that.
Yeah, you get frustrated, right? Because that's so frustrating. And I love this conversation. Those labels are so limiting. And one of the things that I'll do when I run a group and I'll ask people to introduce themselves, I'll say, don't tell me what you do or like how many kids you have. We can get to that later, but just tell me who you actually are, right? Like what descriptive words would you use about yourself so that we can know like the core of you? And then when you were talking, Bo, I was thinking of parenting. And how in my own parenting, I've been very mindful of labeling, right? Like in my house, we grew up, my sister was the smart one. I was the funny one. My brother was the, mess up, to put it nicely, and my little brother was the comic relief. And so I've always been very mindful not to say, oh, this one who's clearly very intelligent is the smart one. You're all smart. You're all funny. You're all musical. You're all cool. You're all compassionate. Like you get to be all those things. You don't just have to be one or the other. And I think we've all in this country, especially in a lot of other countries as well, been socialized to be one thing.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize that we can be all the things. We can be everything because we are all things, right? We're all part of God, like John said, and we're all one thing. We're a collective.
Yeah. God, consciousness, universe, yada, yada, whatever you call
yada.
we prefer yada, yada here.
Yeah, we boiled it down. We're going to write a book, yada, yada.
Yeah. God's name is yada, yada. The other thing, back to God's name, you were saying something that ties right in. You were saying, I am this, I am that, I am this. Well, Moses, when he talked to the burning bush, he said, what's your name? And the burning bush said, I am. And then Jesus said, whatever you ask in God's name is granted, right? So I am this, which means you're going to box yourself into that because you've just asked the universe, yada, yada, for that experience. And I think that a lot of times when you're in a phase of life where you are wandering or lost or running away, it's because you're saying, I am afraid of this, or I don't like this situation. So you're focused on that, and you're putting the I am running is actually creating the need to run.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
so, fascinating. So please expound.
I firmly agree. It's just like I was just thinking back on my situation and like what I had created for myself, and I was just like, sometimes I'm just in awe, like, that whole process of just, and then awakening too. And it's just like, wow, man, I used to hang on to that, and I used to wear all that stuff with a badge of honor. And now it's like, now it's just part of something that I did that, helped bring me to where I am now. And so, sorry. We just.
But you know what? It brought you to where you are now, but you did that. You have to give yourself credit for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a beautiful process. It really is. And one thing just popped in my head, what you were talking about too earlier about like balance, right? And it's just like, it's such a tricky thing because it's like, my wife and I were talking about it on the beach the other day, and it was like balance, it's just like, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to be balanced. It's like, well, you're never really balanced, right? Sometimes you lean this way, and then sometimes, you lean that way. So it's like, trying to be balanced is actually you're fighting the flow. If you're, trying to stay like, you've got to, have everything in this perfect little circle, and like, got to bat that way, so yeah.
Well, one of my dearest friends is a very well-known speaker named Dan Thurman. And I've known Dan since he was 19 years old, but he wrote a book called Off Balance on Purpose. Nice. And he talks about, we get into our comfort zones and we stay in our comfort zones. And to really achieve anything new or different in our life, we have to throw ourselves out of balance on purpose. He uses a unicycle. It's a 6 foot tall unicycle. He says, look, I'm on top of my unicycle. If I want to go in a specific direction, I have to literally take myself out of balance and start falling towards my goal, and then use my feet to catch up.
I like that. That's cool.
Oh, that's a really neat image. That's neat imagery. And I was thinking of yoga, where, you do a lot of balancing poses, and the point is not to have perfect balance, but how gracefully can you fall out of balance and then come back into it.
I like it.
Yeah. I love this conversation because balance.
This is a really good one. I think we're going to have Bo back again, John.
Oh, well, if we have to. Well, hey, when you get two bald men together with a beautiful woman, life is good. Life is good. You know what I'm saying?
I love
it. Yeah, you have more than one solar panel for love machines here.
That's wonderful. I have more than enough here for both of you, so it's okay.
Solar panel for a love machine, right? Well, this has been lovely. We are coming to the end of our time, unfortunately. So we will have to have you back again. Bo, thank you so much. How does everyone find you? Where's all the information? Give me everything so that we can share it to the world.
The best place to go is the website, amoniclear.com. And yeah, I've got some doing some live webinars. You can sign up for that. I've got some like a free guide to once you sign up. And yeah, what we talked about resonates with you, yeah, just reach out and send me a message, and we'll start dialogue that way. I'm pretty easy to talk to.
Sounds great. Sounds wonderful. Tamara, this is take us out. Do whatever you got to do.
All right. I hope you've all enjoyed this chat as much as we have. It's been really good talking to you both. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. And we do look forward to having you back. So all of you out there, go check Bo out on his website, amoniclear.com, and tell us what you think. We always love to hear from you and to hear your perspective and to read your perspective, because we all have our own. It's the only one we can. So we will talk to you again next week. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Please leave all comments on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page or beneath our videos on YouTube.